Now we're in part 2 of lesson 1. We already went over the Democratic National Campaign Committee, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, and the DSCC, the Senatorial Campaign Committee. I just need to have you keep that in the back of your mind as to kind of who you're going to be interfacing with when you're running for federal office. So we can erase this for now. The next thing you got to think about is, okay, I want to run for Congress or I want to run for Senate. Where? Where am I going to run? Principally, and most often, people run where they live. That makes sense, but not always, because it very much depends on what kind of seat you are running for, and that is going to impact what kind of candidate you really are. Now, this is the meat and potatoes that nobody talks to you about that you need to understand, and that is that not all candidates are the same, are going to be treated the same. So think about it. What kind of candidate are you actually going to be? This is the first lesson I learned when I ran for office the first time. Is I thought of myself as a really strong candidate because of my military background and my legal knowledge, and I just thought I was a strong candidate. But that's not how the party looked at me. And so this is something that you have to think about before you get started. Before you get started, you have to know what kind of candidate you are, because if you figure that out, it will shape all of the other decisions that you make. And there are 4 categories of candidates. There are 4 kinds of candidates for federal office. And I'm going to go through them with you right now. Category number 4 is what I like to call a lark or whim candidate. It's not that you are actually running for a lark or on a whim, but it's that you are running for a seat that is considered completely non-competitive, or you are running for a huge seat with no background and no backing and no money. It is incredibly important that you understand that how much money you bring to the table is going to shape dramatically what category you fall into as a candidate. And also what name recognition you already have, what natural constituency you already have. What is your potency? If you are running for a R plus 23 seat, pretty much everybody's going to think that's not winnable, and pretty much everybody's going to look at you as this: a lark or whim candidate. A whim candidate is somebody who has a passion, wants to just try it, throw their name in the basket and see what happens. And anything can happen in an election. Very strange things can happen in elections. Everybody knows that. So, okay, people who are running as lark or whim candidates, people running in R plus 15 districts, people who have no money or no political experience, people who are running on a peculiar issue. At the state level or at the municipal level, you can be very successful running on one key issue, a zoning issue, a school board issue, environmental issue or something like that. But at the federal level, it's harder to do that. So if you're there just to talk about the war in Gaza, you're probably not going to be taken seriously as a candidate. Not that it's not an important issue, but to be taken seriously as a congressional or senatorial candidate, you have to be viewed as having broad appeal. Being a lark or whim candidate doesn't mean it's easy to run. In fact, it makes it much more difficult to run. But if the stakes are lower, there is lower pressure on you. If you're a category 3, you are what I call a strategic candidate. A strategic candidate. A strategic candidate is a candidate that the party doesn't necessarily think you can win, but you may be running in a jurisdiction where there is a state house or state senate underneath you that they care about, that they think they can win, or they think that you can drain resources out of the state. You might be considered a sacrificial lamb candidate, where the party will help you a little bit because you sort of muck up the waters for the GOP, or they just want somebody to bring attention to the weakness of a Republican candidate. Even if you're not going to necessarily win, you can take votes from the other side. Or if there's a third party candidate, like an independent, maybe they say, hey, we're going to throw a Democrat in this race because the independent's going to drag votes away from the Republican Party. If you are a strategic candidate, you're going to have less interface with the party, but you're going to have some, right? They're going to kind of look at you from a distance, and if they feel like there may be some reason to help you out in some way, you're going to start to have engagement with the party. And again, you're going to be engaging with the staff of the DCCC if you're running for Congress, the staff of the DSCC if you're running for Senate. But again, if you're a strategic candidate, there's a reason why the party cares that you're there, even if they're not going to help you win. The next category is what I call a hot candidate. And I use that term hot loosely, right? Because a hot candidate is a candidate that the party's going to pay attention to, either for good reasons, like, this is a flippable seat, or this is a seat that's now vacant and we think we can win it, or this person brings a lot of money to the table, or this person has high visibility, or this person is primarying a Democrat. Hot candidates can be a bad thing, because a hot candidate that is primarying another Democrat starts to create a primary fight, and the party does not like that. Primary fights are expensive, and most of the time, if you're a challenger in a primary, they're going to try to pretend you don't exist. They're going to give you no oxygen. They're not going to debate you. They're not going to take you seriously. They're going to try to keep you away from the voters, because they'll believe, at least initially, until you prove otherwise, that you're not going to have the money and you're not going to have the wherewithal to force yourself before the voters. And so you are a hot candidate, either good or bad. And again, there's a lot of things that could cause you to be hot, right? A lot of things. Especially if for some reason your presence in a race is going to highlight a real problem with the GOP candidate. That's something that they'll pay attention to. But most of the time, hot candidates are candidates that are primarying other Democrats. And like I told you, politics is a team sport. Our team does not like to be primaried. Now, I'm not going to debate with you whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I personally think it's a bad thing, but it does not matter. It is what it is. That is reality. Democrats don't like to be primaried. If you're primarying a Democrat, you're going to be considered a hot candidate. Not necessarily in a good way, right? And then the last is, I'm going to say, this is premium candidate. A premium candidate. A premium candidate is somebody that has either been selected by the party, has been recruited to run for that seat, who brings to the table a lot of personal wealth, or who is in a critical race that has to be won. If you're one of those, you're going to be interfacing with the party all the time. They're going to have staff that is working with your staff. They're going to be monitoring your messaging, your fundraising, your everything. You're going to have resources. You're going to have members of Congress endorsing you early and standing behind you early, so that they're bringing attention to you. You're going to have much more attention from the media, and you're going to have, like, it's going to be an operation, like a small business, if you will. The reason it's important to know what kind of candidate you are is because these 4 categories are going to determine how much money it's going to take for you to win, whether or not you can keep a regular job. Because here, if you're a lark or win candidate, you can keep your regular day gig and do campaigning on the side. If you're either 2 or 1 category candidate, can't do that. Can't do that. You're going to have to probably give up whatever work you're doing as a day job and do this full time, because it is going to take a full-time effort to make that work. Next thing you need to know is that you're not necessarily going to know whether you're a 3 or a 2 or 1 right off the bat. Some people are going to know that, but you may not know that. And so the decisions that you make early on will help you to move from one category to another. I started my first Senate race as a lark whim candidate and moved my way into strategic candidate. The second time I ran, I was a strategic candidate and I moved myself into a hot candidate. The third time I ran, I was somewhere between hot and then kind of premium. And I was trying to move into that premium spot. And that's where I learned where the interface with the party really changes, is when you're in this universe right here between hot and premium, right? Either on the positive or the negative. If you're in this universe, the party's going to have people reaching out to you in your campaign, and your campaign is going to be reaching out to the party, and there's this interface that's going to go on. So now you know what your category is. Then it's time to make the decisions on how to get started. So follow me at part 3 of lesson 1.